Democratic candidate for Governor Beto O'Rourke is going on a weather-related campaign swing across 20 Texas cities. It's called the Keep the Lights On Tour, and he will highlight the failures of Abbott's response to the deadly winter storms last February. But Beto's announcement comes on the heels of a new poll showing him trailing Greg Abbott. According to the Dallas Morning News UT Tyler poll, if the election were held today, Abbott would pull 47% of voters compared to Beto's 36%. 16% said they would vote for somebody else. Here to talk about all this is Jamarr Brown, the co-executive director of the Texas Democratic Party, and James Dickey, former Texas GOP chairman. Jamarr, talk about what Beto hopes to accomplish on this tour, because he needs to make up some points.
Well, I think the one thing that's fundamentally important about this is, a year ago, millions of Texans were sitting in the dark, were sitting without power. Hundreds died because of this. And we've yet to hear from Greg Abbott and Texas Republicans about the tangible steps that they have taken to fix the grid. The governor said back in November that the grid was fixed and that there's nothing else that needed to be done. And then he just said this morning that he can't guarantee that the grid will stand in the midst of freezing temperatures that we're expecting. And so what we're doing on this tour is not only talking about the failures of Greg Abbott, it's also talking about the solutions that voters need to hear so that they know that their lights will stay on in any disaster.
Okay. James, talking about that, for the last 12 months, Governor Abbott has been saying a lot that, the lights are going to stay on, everything's going to be fine. And then, as Jamarr just said this morning, the governor's like, well, there are no guarantees. Is he going back on his word?
Well, that frankly should have been the conversation the entire time. Not both that there are not guarantees, because in life we all know there are no guarantees. There's no guarantee any of us will see tomorrow. But there have been concrete steps taken. So I'm glad Jamarr asked about that, because the steps have been taken, have increased the generation capacity, have done improvements to the reliability of the grid. There have been over 16 bipartisan laws that were passed during last session that have made us up the game. All of the state commissions involved in regulating and controlling power delivery have done a great job stepping up every way they possibly can. It's kind of tragic that Beto needs to do this because he's so desperate to try to catch up.
Okay. Jamarr, do you think the Texas GOP has done enough to keep the lights on?
Well, I think that what's most tragic here when you talk about the Texas Republicans and the grid is, if all of those things have been done, they have not been clearly communicated to Texans and to voters. And then a year after those things would have been done, then we would have had more tangible understanding to know whether the grid will be reliable when we are expecting a freeze even just as this week. And so they absolutely have not done enough, especially around weatherization, where we consistently face high temperatures in the summer and low temperatures in the winter, to know that families can be safe and warm. And they have not been able to do that, nor have they been able to articulate that to voters across the state.
Okay. And finally, James, wrapping up here, is it a case where Beto needs the grid to fail to catch up in the polling?
Absolutely, and that is tragic that he is trying to draw attention to what he hopes happens, which would be an absolute tragedy. Meanwhile, thankfully, the governor and elected Republicans all over the state have been involved in making sure we take the steps to improve. And ERCOT and the PUC, they have made big changes, improving weatherization. Nothing is perfect. There's not a state in the country that's never had an outage. But we're doing the right things.
Well, we're all going to find out in a few days. So, James, Jamarr, thank you both very much.
Thanks for having me.